In today's video, we're going to do a head-to-head showdown that's guaranteed to make some waves. We are comparing Azamara cruises to Viking Ocean cruises. You probably have thought about, should I book on Azamara or should I book on Viking? We're going to break down both experiences. We've been able to sell on both, but I'm here to tell you some of you are going to disagree with our conclusion, and that's okay. There's really no bad cruise. There have been some distinct differences that I think is going to surprise some of you. But with that, let's dive into the comparison and help you book your next best cruise. All right, so it's time for the Azamara versus Viking showdown.
We have sailed on both cruise lines and we've had great experiences with both. So, Azamara, we've done four different cruises in the last couple of years. They're really known for their itinerary intensive adventures. We've also done Viking Ocean cruises. So, we've done Asia, including Australia, and most recently, one from New York City, a repositioning cruise up to Iceland.
We've got about 7 different cruises between the two lines, and we even have some more books. So we've got experience to really tell you the pros and cons, and ultimately who we think wins the battle between Azamara and Viking. One of the things to realize is the ship sizes are great if you want a smaller ship. Azamara ships are smaller. They have under 700 guests. Viking is a little bit under 1,000 guests. Azamara are ships that are getting on in age, but they've all been redone and refurbished. I always call a country club casual. So the ships are in good condition, but by no means are they new builds. And you will notice that in some areas. Viking, on the other hand, now they're not all new builds anymore because some of them were built several years ago, but they're a newer cruise line when it comes to ocean. And they all follow the exact same design. They have quite a number of ships, a much larger fleet as well. And the ship size is quite a bit larger in both passengers as well as gross tonnage. One of the biggest differences clearly is if you need a new, brand new ship, very modern, then Viking really is going to end up being your choice. But we've always been super comfortable in Azamara and always found the ways that they've done the refurbishment and the upgrades on Azamara that have kept them current and definitely do not feel dated overall.
Azamara will be slightly more intimate experience.
That's a good point. You'll definitely feel like you're on a bigger cruise with a lot more people. It's almost about 50% more people. So you will feel like a bigger cruise experience.
As I mentioned, Azamara is known for their unique and immersive itineraries, usually focusing on a single destination. You have longer port stays. Sometimes you have overnights in a port, and then many off the beaten path ports. Their smaller ship size lets them get into the smaller ports. Viking Ocean cruises have extensive itineraries around the world. They have a more educational focus with speakers, lectures, and things like that. They mix mainstream and more unique ports.
Yeah, the ships are larger, so they cannot get into some places that Azamara can get into. Like we've sailed up the river right directly into
Seville.
when we were in Dublin. We were literally in Dublin city center. Though Viking Ocean ships are not huge, they're still quite a bit larger. So they're going to be a bit more limited. You're definitely gonna get some more creative itineraries with Azamara. Every time we were on Viking, I don't think we didn't have a single overnight. It's possible one place we did, but typically no, that I remember. Maybe Hong Kong, we had an overnight, but I think it was our last port. The nice thing with Azamara, sometimes you get those overnights and longer stays. You don't leave till 10, 11 o'clock at night. That's definitely one of the differences. You can start to see on the scorecard, certainly it's easy to argue better ships on Viking, better itineraries on Azamara. Now, Viking does have one edge. They have a lot more ships. So on a given week, a given month, they'll have a lot more variability of where they may be. As far as the overall guest experience, they're very close overall. They do have good crew to guest ratios. You have more people on Viking. It feels a little less personal to us. We've gotten to know the crew a little bit better on Azamara. You see the same faces a lot, as well as the passengers. And one of the big differences we've experienced is the passengers.
That was one of the things that drew us into Azamara. We tried them once and we were astonished at how people were friendly and talked about their travels. It was really easy to strike up conversations with people on the ship.
It's more casual for whatever reason. I think we've struggled a bit more on Viking, but it seems like there's more keeping to yourself. It's a little less likely to talk to each other. You can't go wrong with either cruise line. And that's one of the things we felt every time we've sailed. It's been a little bit different. We just have had a bit more of an enjoyable experience socially on board Azamara. Now, inclusions, this is important. What's included for the price? The good news is both cruise lines include quite a bit. Azamara, as you can see there, your gratuities are included. Keep this in mind on Viking, they are not. That adds up over the course of 7 days, 14 days, 20 days. Azamara will give very basic cocktails, basic drinks, your gin and tonic, your vodka tonic, etc. But those are included, and beer and wine at your meals. You do not need to pay extra for a premium beverage package. You can. If you pay extra for their premium beverage package, you get access to some of the more top shelf, some of the more exotic cocktails. One time we got it for free. And honestly, we didn't even really hardly know the difference. They do have self-service laundry. Even though Wi-Fi is not typically standard, a lot of the promotions they run will offer you Wi-Fi. When you get on board, you have the opportunity to upgrade to a higher speed, which depends on your needs. We always do the upgrade. You may not need it. Viking is probably a bit more inclusive because they include one excursion per port, but you need to know it's not the best excursions. Like Azamara, one of my complaints is their excursion prices are ridiculous. They're really high sometimes. So I don't love that. The excursions are okay, but they're overpriced in my opinion. I think Viking, it's probably similar. It is nice that they include one, but it's only going to be a hop on, hop off, bus ride around the town. One time they literally gave us a piece of paper when we were in Greenland and said, that was our excursion. Go ahead and walk around the town. I think it's one of those things that sounds good on paper. It's not as good in reality. And don't forget, gratuities are not included, but Wi Fi is, but the Wi Fi is not good. The experience that I've had on the 3 cruises we were on is really slow. And if you have to do any work on board like we do, it's pull your hair out slow. Free is good, but I much prefer Starlink and being able to pay extra if I wanted to for higher speeds.
Both Azamara and Viking have an emphasis on education. They have enrichment programs with lectures about the places you're going, which we love. The entertainment is okay. It's good. It's not great, but you're really not on the ship for the entertainment. One of the strengths of Azamara, though, are the cultural programs that they have and the special events, destination celebrations, the As Amazing Evening.
A lot of times they'll have both and they'll bring performers onto the ship
Mhm.
from the area. So we've had these in Japan. We had an amazing experience. There's another video. I'll put a link down below. When we did the Ireland intensive, we had performers coming from the different ports. They do a better job bringing in local entertainment and making it more customized to the area that you're in.
Viking does a very good job with the lecturers that they have on board and different topics that relate to where you're going.
They both have several musical performances throughout, and you'll see the same performers. It's on Azamara, we've had some amazing performances, like where we like the singers and the dancers are great. We've had one in particular where they just weren't. And so we had to watch the same people over and over do all the different shows. It's not going to be like being on Royal Caribbean and having pyrotechnics or anything like that. But I can also say that I found Azamara a little bit more current. Viking, the performances and the music and the songs are extremely dated. Hopefully they've changed that a little bit. But where Elzamara sometimes tries to have a little pop, a little bit of rock, and then of course old standards. They have a little bit of something for everybody. I felt like Vikings performances were really dated. We didn't enjoy it as much. There's another big thing that we have to point out.
Yeah, but I know you're going with
Yeah,
this.
and this is a pet peeve. Elzamara typically on their performances, they do 2 performances per night of most of the shows. There may be an exception or here and there. You're only talking about 600 some odd people. So you're talking at most 300 people per show, and some people don't go to the shows. Viking, on the other hand, could have up to almost 900, close to 1,000 people. And I don't know why, but so many of the key shows are one time. The theater does not fit 900 people. I think I looked it up one time, it might be like 600. So if a lot of people decide to show up, you know what you're doing? You're standing. There were multiple shows on multiple cruise lines on Viking that we had to stand just to watch the show, unless we got there 45 minutes early on an expensive cruise. Why do I need to show up super early? It was really frustrating. Several times we just left because we couldn't see over people who were standing. Just keep that in mind. Maybe this has changed. Maybe somebody down below is going to tell me that, hey, now they do 2 shows all the time. That was a big difference
Yes.
between the two.
Who knows about those shows? Maybe we.
Food and dining. Look, this is always going to be subjective. People are always going to agree to disagree when it comes to food and dining. What I will tell you is the food is very good on both. I would probably give the edge to Viking just because I think overall the buffet experience is a little bit nicer. It's more current, it's bigger. Azamar does a good job in a small area. They do a great job keeping that buffet unique every day. Again, I think it's a better job of making a destination focus with the food, but still, they're more limited on space. That was one of the differences that we did note. Both cruise lines have specialty restaurants. Azamara has Aquilina and Prime Sea. They are extra charge, but they're typically, I believe, $40 or so per person. And you can get a package to maybe bring it down a touch more. With Viking, you will get one reservation at the chef's table and one at Manfredi's, which is the Italian. We love the chef's table. And a lot of times we've tried to get into more than one. If they have room, they will let you. You might have to go really late or really early. And it's a tasting menu. And for the most part, I think we've enjoyed those tasting menus. One of the first sailings was our favorite. The last one we did wasn't quite as good. They also have the World Cafe, which is very unique up top with the neat bar. They've got,
Norwegian type dishes up there, and it's mostly for breakfast and lunch.
yeah.
But it's a great place to go in the morning and get your coffee and to get a waffles and some specialty Scandinavian type food.
So that's the scorecard there. I think you'll be happy on both, but I think it's fair to give Viking in this case a little bit of the edge. So you can see it's close going back and forth here. Demographics of the passengers, it's going to tip be well-traveled people, active people. I might argue that we probably have had some younger people on Azamara. It will really depend upon when you're going and the itinerary that you choose. Very common for 50 plus, 60 plus, 70 plus. You're not going to see kids, but definitely skews on an older, well-traveled demographic. It's not a party crowd. It's not a loud crowd. But like we said, we like the Azamara crowd better, a little bit more casual. Maybe the Viking crowd seems a bit more reserved.
Yeah, that's fair.
So a big thing is prices. Viking is more expensive. In particular, remember tips are not included. So that starts to really add up. And this is something you need to take into consideration. When I said Viking has better ships and they even have better food, but there are some service things we don't like as much that we'll talk about in a moment. We already talked about it with the shows, and price is an important consideration. Let's talk pricing. This to me is really important because it's how much you pay per cabin price per day. I'm using Cruise Plum here and I have 1,100 different options, but I sorted it by the cheapest cabin price per day. And this includes everything. So this is going to include gratuities, port taxes, and the cruise itself. It's no surprise. You notice here that these are all Azamara sailings. Some of them are transatlantics or repositioning, which typically are the lowest. But do you see any Vikings in here yet? I said, show me all Azamara and all Viking. This first page only has Azamara sailings, and we're getting up to about $300 uh, cabin price per day, which is still quite reasonable, especially when you consider this a small ship cruise line, comfortable luxury overall. But again, I just went to the next page. Again, all Azamara options. Right now, we're up to $400 per day. Still very reasonable. By the way, this is typically going to be inside cabins. Of course, these are the cheapest. And in this case, still not a Viking. The first time we finally get a Viking sailing is a transatlantic, and it's $462 for the cabin for the day. We're going to start to see some Vikings in here, but still mostly Azamara until we get much higher in the price. Now we're getting to $500 per day. And now you're going to start to see a lot more Vikings come up here. Another key reason is you're going to see Vikings mostly going to have balcony. So that also explains it a little bit. They're going to be more expensive on that basis. And if you start to compare balcony to balcony, that's when you're going to start to see it being a little bit more comparable overall. I don't look at it like a huge edge to Azamara because of the inside versus balcony argument, but definitely believe that if you go for some promotions and some sales, you'll just get a lower price per cabin per day in general on Azamara.
We love discovering new ways to save money while we travel the world. Go to the link and sign up for our free guide so you can unlock the secrets to traveling the world on a budget. We have
Yeah,
all kinds of great tips.
you'll be able to download that right away. We put some of our best money saving tips in there for any type of travel that you decide to do.
Yes, if you enjoy this content, like this video. And if you want to hear more, subscribe to our channel and we'll be sure to keep putting these out. Let's talk about your longer itineraries. We believe both of these cruise lines are suitable for longer cruises. The only thing we would say is since Azamara has the smaller ship, we wouldn't do a transatlantic or a longer repositioning cruise over a large body of water just because you feel the movement more. But otherwise, I think they're both great for longer cruises.
As far as the fitness area overall, Viking again, because it's more modern, it's going to win this. It has a really great gym. It really does. It's got excellent equipment. It's a pretty good size overall. It's not that crowded. Azamar does have a nice gym. We've always enjoyed it. It's just quite a bit smaller. It's probably half the size. The equipment is generally fairly up to date, but we have had on occasion an experience where one or two of the cardio machines were not working and they just don't have as many as Viking has. So that can impact you. So we do give the edge to Viking in this category. It's just a newer, more modern fitness gym experience overall. So some of the pros and cons really quick on Viking. You've got the great ships, clearly food, very good, a lot of inclusions, and they have an excellent reputation. That's why we know some of what we're saying is controversial. I know there's a lot of rabid fans of Viking and for good reason. But we do think there are some cons. We already mentioned the shows. We've run into this on the restaurants too, where the restaurants get really busy and it's very hard to get a table, or you have to wait quite a bit. You can't make reservations in the main restaurant. The specialty ones you can, and you end up waiting a lot. We've had some of our longest waits for a table on Viking, way longer than we've had with Azamara. I already mentioned the internet's we found is pretty lousy, especially compared to what you can get these days. Free is nice, but not if it's not very good. All right, and so those are really just some of the top pros and cons for us overall. Azamara, clearly, we really enjoy that bit more intimate atmosphere. A few less guests just makes it a bit more casual, we think, and you'd get to know people a little bit better, including the crew. Some edge for sure in the itineraries, the itinerary intensive, and then the small ship. You can just get into some places you can't get into overall. We mentioned it doesn't win on the food overall, though it's close, but it is a better value. It's not going to be a inexpensive cruise by any means, but I think arguably it's going to be a little bit less typically than Viking.
The other advantage of a small ship is it's also easy to get around.
You'll never get lost. Let's put it that way on Azamar. Azamar also has, we mentioned, some unique onboard experiences. We mentioned this before, the Amazing Evenings, which are really cool cultural experiences. Depending upon where you're sailing to, they're always going to be very different. And then they have a lot of their deck parties, the white night party, the barbecue. They do a great job with the space that they have, making sure throughout the week or the 2 weeks that you're on, there's going to be a lot of really cool experiences. One nice thing we saw with Ozamar a bit more, I think they had shuttle services in ports. If you want to do your own thing, they seem to always go out of their way to make sure that they can get you into the main town. I don't think we always experience that on Viking because Viking probably feels like, hey, we're giving you a free tour in each port. Use that one if you want. But we didn't always have transportation. With Ozamara, it was really easy to do our own thing, save a lot of money on the shore excursions.
We talked about the themed dinner nights, which is great. It allows Asmara to offer a much wider variety of different foods. So it always keeps it interesting.
Every once in a while, that's a good point because I would remember we were on sometimes on Viking and we get the really long menu in the dining room, and a lot of it just felt a little bit the same sometimes. I don't know why that is. These are very subjective things that we're parsing, and it's not going to impact your ability to have an amazing time, really, on either cruise line. I would say drum roll, please, but it's already on the screen. Azamara would be the choice if it came down to choosing between Azamara and Viking. Now, you can't go wrong with either one. And if you truly need a newer ship, a sleeker ship, a nicer cabin, because there's no question the cabins on Viking in general are nicer, more modern, and they're larger, then certainly you want to lean that way. But if I was to look at same itinerary between the two, I'm going to guess likely that the Azamara ship is probably going to get one or two more special, unique places. And I like the idea of having a little smaller ship, less people, sometimes about 50% less. When we get off the ship, we just seem to have a little less to criticize on Azamara than we based upon what we paid. We just don't like to run into some of those service issues that just surprise us when we're booking on what should really be a luxury experience.
Yeah, make no mistake, you can't go wrong with Viking. We always enjoy being on Viking, and the spaces on the ship are just beautiful. You can't go wrong. But for the value, for the money, and for the intensive itineraries, I think Azamara is wins for us.
Yeah, right now we have one Azamara booked for this year, and we always look at more. We don't have a Viking at the moment. It doesn't mean we won't do another Viking Ocean. It's just not on the top of our list right now. Now, I know some of you will disagree, and by all means, put that in the comments. If you've done both and you feel Azamara is better or Viking is better, we want to hear that. That's fun, and it's good for other people to read because these are always subjective experiences. And on an individual cruise, you can sometimes have a vastly different experience for a variety of different reasons. Comment down below for sure on that. Now, one thing that's really important, no matter how you do this, is saving money on that booking. So we're going to put in the corners our suggested video on really great ways that you can book any cruise line, whether it's Viking, Azamara, or something else, and save quite a bit on that booking. We dive a lot deeper into some strategies that people don't really know about that can save you a lot of money. So definitely check that out next. Like the video, subscribe. We really appreciate it. And
We'll see you out there.